Few people may think kids are dumb. I was one of them in the past. As a kid, I honestly thought I didn't know much. On my first hint of adulthood, I wanted to do a favor to all the kids by telling them what to do in life. Yeah, the joke was on me. Thankfully, a visionary changed my perception and helped me live like a professional adult and a happy kid. Welcome to Happy Professionals, my dear happy people. Here we are with another episode of Happy Professionals, and let's take a quick detour from all the serious, focus centric, high stress jobs, and let's talk about the original gangster of professional stress, the teaching profession. Today we have Nivedita Palekar. She lives in Pune as a professional teacher. It's really an honor to talk to her, as profession teaching is on top of my respected professions. I'm a son of a professional teacher, retired teacher, and I've always admired teaching as a profession. Thank you so much, Nivedita, for joining us today.
And thank you for having me here.
And we're really looking forward for a non-educative session today.
I'll try my best.
Thank you so much for joining. So my first question to you is, kids are naughty only till a certain age or till a certain time into the conversation. After a few questions, they'll make us think like them and question a lot of things we do as adults. So how are you dealing with kids on a daily basis, especially when they're going to hate you for making them sit and learn?
Okay, you started off on the most difficult question, I must say. To be frank, my only way of ensuring that they're engaged is knowing what they like. So when I started teaching, initially I faced this problem a lot, that how do you make someone sit? Because my teaching experience was initially in a university. I taught master's students in Pune University. Although they were remedial classes, I used to teach them for 2 hours at a go. And my first day teaching, I prepared a huge amount, went there, realized I finished it within half an hour. Now, what do I do for the next 1.5 hours? I still managed somehow to continue it for another half an hour or 15 minutes more. But after that, I had to give up, because that time period would be a waste of their time when I don't know what I'm going to talk to them next. Just asking them random questions didn't make sense to me. That's when I started realizing that no, I need to think about how to keep them engaged, relate their likes and dislikes to what I'm teaching, and ensure that they have fun with it. Because the more you have fun while learning, the less daunting it seems, and the better you do. Doesn't matter whether you're an A-star student or you're a just passing student, you'll still have fun with it. You'll never forget the knowledge that you've taken in that class, in that case. So I used to reflect back on what my teachers used to do, think about how they kept our interest for the whole 2 hours, and then started applying it. This, however, came down for me in case of now I'm teaching in a school. So suddenly from any age group, I had to shift that attention span to half an hour or 1 hour maximum. I don't get more than that time to teach in that classroom, but even that is too much for the students. They hardly have 15 minutes attention span, and you have to continue for half an hour or max 1 hour at a time, and ensure that they're enjoying, understanding, and learning at the same time. So that shift also was drastic. But the moment I started using their interests, I learned a lot of what new things are there around. And at the same time, they were also like, oh, this is related to what we like. That's surprising. So that kind of answer used to come a lot from them. And that's something I try even today. Every time I have a class, there's no fixed example with me that I'll give them. Some, of course, pre-prepared, whatever I may have thought about. But my first entire activity that goes for one entire week, depends on how many classes I have with them. If it's 2 classes, 3 classes in a week, then That entire week, I'll just take an icebreaker with them, where I'll just get to know them, what are their likes, dislikes, and then somewhere or the other in my whole planning of the year, I'll make that change of how I can introduce examples related to what they like, whether it be animations, movies, books, sports, anything. Doesn't matter what they like, but how can it be incorporated in the subject? And the subject that I teach is also something that is very practical, but very much misunderstood, which is, of course, economics. So, yeah, that's something I try. I don't know how successful I'm at it, but they do tell me that they enjoy it. So I hope that they learn out of it as well.
That's a very economical answer for sure. Thank you so much, Nivedita. With the choice of words, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Compassion is an instinctive quality in kids. In fact, almost of all the species. As a teacher, seeing a lot of kids grow, at what age or at what phase of kids' lives we humans are losing that compassion, if not completely, at least a portion of it? Where do you think we're losing that compassion while growing up?
Again, you are putting me up for the most difficult set of questions. But to be frank, compassion is ongoing. It's not something you can stop completely. Neither is it something you can instigate in someone by force. Yeah. When do we lose it? It's completely different for different people. For example, I still see kids who are over compassionate and overcompensating because of that compassion, and need support to realize that compassion at certain extent is all right, and you need to work on how to be emotionally strong at the same time. On the other side, I also come across kids who are least compassionate. We can't force them to become compassionate, but at the same time, at least have some amount of sympathy or empathy developed is what we're expecting. So when you look at a group of kids, you can't say everyone is compassionate at the same level. It comes with teachings, it comes with your surroundings, it comes with what you face at home as well, and what you face with your friends, peer circle, in your school, all over. That complete set is what works out towards whether you are a compassionate person or not. Because there tend to be things that affect outside the school also to students, which affect their nature in terms of whether they can be compassionate or not. It's not always everything is taught in a school. Certain things we learn, we pick up outside it as well. As a school, of course, everyone is trying to impart that knowledge that you have to have empathy, you have to have sympathy, and you should be compassionate towards others, understand their problems, and not just start blaming others. But we come across so many instances where this is lacking, even at student age, whether it be a grade 1 student or whether it be a master student. This happens when that particular person comes from a background where there is a lack of compassion around themselves. So they are picking it up from the environment and then applying it to their lives. It has to be conditioned over a time period for them to eventually learn to be better and not fall back on what they have seen. So it takes a long time. So when do we lose it? I absolutely have no answer for it. But yes, are we getting desensitized because of the amount of social media around for the students? At a younger age, I would definitely say yes. It's coming way to a younger age group now where they are not as compassionate as what we would remember from our own school days comparatively. But when exactly, that I cannot define as an age group particularly.
We live in a very competitive world, apparently. Well, I was smart enough to step aside from this chaos thanks to some thought provoking personal tragedies. I now live in a very comfortable, beautiful, yet progressive career path of mine. But how do you see competition as a phenomenon from our ages to today?
As a comparison, you mean, compared to ours?
Overall, as a phenomenon, like competition as a phenomenon.
It has existed for ever since humans have been there. There has been competition. The nature of the competition definitely has changed. Now it is much more stringent. At our time, you could say we had to be excellent at a particular thing, and then we would get hired for whatever we were good at. However, between once we started working, we started realizing no, they need multitasking as well. So we had to start picking that up. Whereas the students nowadays are facing it in their school life itself, where you have to be multitasking, you have to have multiple talents. One is not enough anymore. And at the same time, succeed academically. Those academic marks have never gone away as a competition. Something that, despite being a teacher, I tell my students, it's not the score you are getting, but rather what you've learned from it. Of course, the score is important, but it's not the end of all. We try to ensure that they understand that, but that pressure of getting highest, getting into a best university, scoring 90%. If you've not scored 1 mark less, you are getting stressed. It's still there. It's not completely gone, absolutely not. But the amount of exposure these students have has definitely increased the amount of competition that they are facing today compared to us, because you are needed to know so many different things at the same time that it becomes a little stressful for every student that, oh, we have to score well also, we have to be good at art also, we have to be good at some other quality also additionally to be able to reach a particular goal. You can't do just one and be done with it. So that definitely is a higher amount of competition, I would say, compared to what we faced earlier.
Is that competitiveness good or bad?
Depends on how you take it. So this is what we try to ensure that the students understand, that competition is good when you're able to accept your failures and learn from them. But if you are so focused on just winning that you don't take your failures into consideration and work on them, it's going to have a bad impact on your mental health, your physical health, and it's going to also hamper the way you deal with things. So that becomes a big problem at a later age. When they make a mistake in class, for example, I say, it's okay, you're doing this in class, that's fine. In exam, to avoid that, you make it here, it's better, you're learning from it. So don't take the pressure of how will I ask a question to ma'am? Will it be a dumb question? Don't take that pressure. Ask anything you like. If I feel that that question requires a particular guidance, I'll definitely answer you. Otherwise, we will leave it at the floor, but it will never be commented on that it's a dumb question. No. Because questions are what make students more curious and make them learn. So I tell them mistakes mean that you're trying. This is a particular saying I have found on Google many times, which I use for my students, that it's okay to make mistakes, but repeating a mistake is what you should avoid. That if you are in this competitive world, you have to learn from your mistakes, correct them, and perhaps make a different one to learn from a different scenario altogether and get back on your feet again. Don't halt if you fail, or don't wait until you are at a certain peak. Keep going ahead. That's more important. Just moving forward is all it requires for you to defy whatever confinements you may have been placed under because of the competitions that are going around. At least that's something I try. How much it gets imbibed into them, it's again a personal matter, how much they take in. So I can't say I'm 100% successful in this situation, but that's my attempt towards ensuring that they understand it's okay to make mistakes. but it's better to learn from it and make a different one next time, not the same one though. Making the same mistake again and again, however, can bring you back again down. So that's something I try to avoid with them. Hopefully they enjoy it as well.
So, love is the first act kids respond to.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, as babies, they enjoy the company of parents. But going forward, a lot of parents spend their time securing their kids' future than living with them in the present.
Yeah.
What is your advice to the parents?
This is a bigger concern in today's day actually, because we are so focused on the future that many a times we are missing out on the now, especially the parents. What are their kids doing? How are they at a particular stage? They are so busy in the life for earning better for the future of the child that they are forgetting that how to enjoy the time with them now. Certain times we try and call in such cases where, at least in our school, where we find that the student is absolutely adversely getting affected because of such a situation. Then a counseling session with the school counselor takes place where we come across that, okay, this is not working out. The student is absolutely not able to pay attention because something at the background is going wrong. What it is, we do not discuss with ourselves. We just inform the counselor takes care of it. In classroom, however, we try to ensure that they start understanding the situation, and that's it. We don't discuss that situation with them unless there's a guidance properly given to us. Because nowadays, emotionally, the kids are way more sensitive than what we realize. And just directly speaking without knowing the problem properly, without having the proper qualification for it, can actually go wrong with a particular child. And that is the reason why we don't take that step unless we have been guided by the school counselor these days. But we do try to take an effort where we ensure to tell the parents that, you need to. It's not necessary they spend the complete day with the child just to ensure that they are working properly in school. But a small talk every night before going to bed helps. That what did you do today in the whole class? Just listening to them blabber the whole thing that happened in the school, understanding and having a friendly chat with them at their level. That goes a long way, and that's something I would want parents to look forward to and work with, because the more they get to know these funny stories, the more they will also enjoy it and be a part of the now that they are missing out, waiting to work for the future. So that small talk every day, just 5 minutes before bed, 10 minutes before bed, is more than enough for the kid also at times to know, oh, they are listening. They're not neglecting what I have to say. And that makes the biggest difference that we've seen, these small steps that we have come across.
What is the impact of movies or music on kids? How do you channelize the media content towards the kids in your class?
Okay, that's a tough question once again. I don't know where you're getting your questions from, but I must say you are putting me on my full thought cycles and then making me answer. That is something I must say off the bat first. Media is so easily available these days to students that we cannot completely deny its existence in a classroom either. We kind of act like we have to, try and convert to what should be appropriate or what you should do when there is an inappropriate content that the students are viewing. For example, when Game of Thrones came in, it was such a hype that even students of 5th standards and everything were viewing it. Now, it's not a content that should be given PG-13 or below. Anyone below 13 shouldn't be viewing it without parental guidance. And most commonly, you saw that it was so easily available that they were viewing it without any guidance, without any references. And this is just one example, but there are multiple such series which they view and are not appropriate for their ages. Actually, you cannot completely disregard or tell them, okay, don't view it. That's not going to stop it there. One, parents have to take caution that they put in the parental lock on the systems, but not all parents know how to. So knowing at first that you have to put in a lock, and at the same time, even if they are viewing certain content, how to get them to realize that this is perhaps not age appropriate. So completely not viewing the material is not something that can happen these days. Media content available to students these days is very explicit, and there's very little control on how you can stop them from viewing something that's not appropriate for their ages. Rather, very few parents know how to put a parental lock on their streaming sites and know how to control what the students are watching. Especially with this pandemic, we realized the amount of monitoring the kids required was so high that it started becoming so difficult for parents. They used to come and complain to us, ma'am, but he is watching something and doesn't even open the door. I don't know what he's watching. And it used to be these kind of complaints multiple times a day. So denying it completely or telling them don't do this, when you put that kind of a not to enter sign, that's the first thing they will do. So instead, guiding them towards the appropriate channel becomes more appropriate. So asking them what they like, also telling them that perhaps this is okay only for a certain topic, and then guiding them towards what could be more interesting and appropriate for their age is something that we have to take into consideration. As I gave the example earlier of Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is something that is based on political strife between different powers to come in power. More so of the American, or the not even American, to be more exact, more England side politics that used to take place before the European section, the European fights between monarchies initially. So that is what the basis of it is for the author. That is something we tell them, that you look at the history, you look at the politics, but you ignore the part that is not appropriate for their age level. So what they can learn from the history is okay. Then perhaps guiding them towards a better version of what they could read instead of that, or what they could view instead of that, and giving them some inputs on keeping their interest, but at the same time not completely denying it, because the more taboo you make a subject, the more they are curious about it and they'll go and explore it unattended. They don't have any guidance at that moment with them in that case. So it's better to allow discussion, at least then we get to know what they're viewing. If you completely ban discussions, that however can be a very serious situation at times. So nowadays, the more bigger influence after Game of Thrones we've seen is K-pop. So that has been a bigger influence these days on students. So not completely telling them don't watch K-pop. It's good music. It's not bad music. It's just that you can perhaps tell them maybe why not learn the language. That develops their language skills as well. Think about how you can explore it further. That is something that we try to guide them towards. So to be more exact, social media is not something we can completely take out of their lives, but maybe making them aware of the dangers and telling them discussion is required, and ensuring that they discuss is more important these days, because you can't have complete control over what they view these days. And that's why a better way is to make them aware that there are dangers and you need to be aware of these pitfalls, and at the same time guiding them to a better solution or a situation is something that can happen through discussion. At least you are then aware that yes, I need to safeguard them from a certain situation, or I need to take care of putting a parental lock, or what can be done better. So even as teachers, we don't completely deny the material that they view. We allow them to discuss it in class, but perhaps guide the discussion towards what could be better instead.
how do you deal with the screen addiction? The amount of content is a lot that it doesn't matter what's happening on the screen for the kids. It's just an addiction. They just have to keep watching the screen. It became an addiction for a lot of people. How do
Yes.
you deal with that? And what is your opinion on the percentage split between the screen and the real life?
Okay. Mm, the pandemic was a tough time for us as well, because we had to first figure out how to ensure that the students are sitting online in class, and at the same time ensure that they are in class and not doing something else on their own screens, which was a complete and utter disaster in the initial 1 or 2 months that once this pandemic hit, and no one was prepared for it. So it started becoming so monotonous for students in class that they would explore something different while the class is going. So your attendance is scored, but there is nothing that you're learning from it. You're rather busy with something else, which is where in our school we have this pattern of active learning. So that's a strategy. We are expected to know and ensure that they participate in the class. So active learning is something that students are actively not just listening but interacting with the teacher while the class is going on, and in a way through those activities they are learning. So the activity is completely different, but the interaction and the learning process is what the strategy is about. And that to some extent helped us, because then we used to keep material ready. After the 2 months when we realized this disastrous effect, we tried to keep many tools ready where we could explore their interests in a format that they would enjoy online as well. However, as a teacher, I would say I detested the pandemic time for online learning. I know to some extent it is essentials. Today, we are in an age where we require certain knowledge, and it may not be available to us in that same area for us to physically go and visit it. So then you have to sit online, you have to go through it. But only when it's necessary makes it a better time period than for students who are of age group below 13. I think physical schooling makes more sense, because the kind of discipline and the kind of values that get imparted in a school and in the atmosphere along with your peers is not what you can get when you're just sitting in front of one screen and trying to understand it through that screen. So how to counter the screen time? There, it is a combined effort. It's not one person's job. You have to take the parents into consideration. You have to bring the child as well, and making them understand that this is somewhere or the other hampering them and not just the people around. So it's a group effort that you have to take. So as I said, in our school, we used to realize that someone needs help. Then we would guide them towards the school counselor, and then this counselor would take matters through the group discussion with parents, student, and the counselor themselves. And if needed, they would rope in the teacher to what different action could be taken, so that the student is not getting hampered in any way, at the same time learning and having fun with the studies as well. So again, completely stopping it is not easy. It's, as you said, it's an addiction, and addiction cannot be without withdrawal symptoms. So in such cases, we used to give them small material, so their time, if you reduce it at a slower pace rather than completely stopping it in one go, might work better compared to giving a complete ban on watching television or anything. Just give them instead, no, only these many minutes a day, that's allowed. So you watch, but at a limited time period, and then you give them other activities to do to keep them physically engaged and mentally as well engaged into something that they enjoy. Then they easily forget about the screen time. So once they came out of the pandemic, as teachers, our management had ensured that they told us, management isn't more about our admin department. They had ensured that we were given the freedom to give them some time to adjust. Having come out of that pandemic, we were also asked to be empathetic with them, not just that you teach. Now that you have the physical school, you just go on teaching. And we also agreed with this approach, because it's not easy to come out of that box system of learning and into an open environment which you've not had for 3 whole years. So to some extent, we were a little relaxed on their mistakes while writing. We were a little relaxed, at least in our school, when it came to how much content they were writing. We slowly built it up later, however. We didn't force them, but instead of not taking care of it at all, some time period was given as a buffer for them to adjust. The mistakes were still pointed out, but you had to be polite and you had to be very caring with them to understand that no, this is a mistake, you have to improve on it, and then develop them into getting used to now the physical format of learning. These are their formative years where they quickly pick up what to change. And the more you help them with it, rather than just scold them out of it, it works better, is what we found out in the past year, that comparatively the mistakes started reducing by the end of the year. And the group effort was helpful much more of getting them out of that whole, no, everything is available online, so why not I just sit and study on the screen and also enjoy my time on different activities instead. So that shell, to some extent, breaking that shell, it took 1.5 years to be more exact, for them to realize and for us to also get them out of it completely.
Coming out of screens is one thing, but physical activity is all the more tough. Motivating them to indulge in a physical activity, how do you deal with that? And we must already accept that physical education or emphasis is mandatory now. It's not optional anymore. So how do you push kids to come out of the screens and do some physical activity?
In case of physical activities, even during class, I would just make them randomly do Simon Says. Do you remember the game Simon Says? It was more like, if Simon says touch your nose, then you touch your nose. So getting them to do small actions, whether I teach grade 1 or whether I teach grade 12, didn't matter, but getting them to do certain action and fun activities physically, instead of them directly jumping into a proper exercise format and going for 1 or 2 hours of games completely. This is what helped us. So our sports teacher used to give us that, today I'm going to have sports class with them. Why don't you add certain activities so that they will enjoy sports more? So we used to have a combined effort on how we could get them to move around physically and not get completely tired on the ground. But initially it was a tough time, because there was zero activity during pandemic. Although the sports classes used to happen online, with them showing what they learned from the teacher in terms of exercises you could do in a room, it still wasn't enough. And most students were not willing to even enter a ground. So I also take a subject called Global Perspectives with my students. Along with economics, I teach Global Perspectives to younger grades. Here is where I used to utilize their physical movement, where they would be taught stage presence. So Global Perspectives is inclusive of not just how to do research, but how to be a proper public speaker, or how to present your ideas in a more effective manner. So that is also included in it while learning that particular topic. And whenever we would have any kind of school activities, whether it is 15th of August, annual day, or anything, we would then ask them to work on it. We would work along with them on how to change it, what kind of voice modulations you require, how to speak. So since our school is very small, we have this one-on-one interaction with our students, and we try and use it to the fullest extent, because our group is very small. So every student from the class has to participate. Doesn't matter whether you're saying 1 word, 2 words, or whole paragraphs on stage, but you're doing it with proper actions, you're learning. important is that you're doing it. The part of doing that activity and getting over your fear was what we tried to imbibe in them, rather than how you did it. That graph comes only after they get over the fear. Then you start improving on how to present it. So initially, just come and speak. That's something also was very daunting for them at the start of this year. But eventually, they slowly overcame it. They also had fun along with it. And they used to come up with ideas that, no, now I want to speak. Let me speak in class. So it eventually, by the end of the year, it used to be more of a chaos where everyone wants to speak and no one wants to sit down and shut up. So that was something we also enjoyed at the end of it.
You are a traveler yourself.
Yes.
How do you recommend traveling to kids?
Okay, I'm going to have to think about it for a minute. Many times I have shared my travel experiences with students. I don't just travel, I travel where one, it's trekking many a times, and second, where it's my interest area. So that's what draws me towards a particular area for traveling. That what's interesting about this particular city, this particular area, and that is what I'll go for. Not necessarily every time will it be the most touristy attraction. For example, a few years back, I went to Singapore. Now, Singapore is one of the hottest city when it comes to tourist attractions. It is also the financial hub. My attraction for it was twofold. One was I wanted to go as a solo traveler. So it was not completely solo, but along with just one other person. So it was just me and one of my colleagues. She and I were the only two people. I wanted to do it a budget travel. So I tried and searched for what could be done on how to do budget travel. At the same time, we never went for the tourist guided city tours. We walked in the city completely. I can say I have walked in Singapore to know it way better than what I could have seen through the tourist guide books that I have seen. And coming across the areas that are not perhaps completely shown was something I enjoyed even more during my travel. So I try to share these experiences with my students to help them understand that their travel should be their personalized way of looking at things, and that is what they should target towards, or what their interest falls into, and then eventually plan for it. It's not necessary everyone goes for a budget trip or everyone goes for a trek, but explore what your interest is in that place, and that will help you enjoy the travel more. It does teach you a lot, is what I try to help them understand. That yes, when you travel, you get to explore, and that helps you learn. That is what your more important motive should be, is what I try telling them. Some agree, some completely disagree, but then that's again their personal belief.
As kids and as teachers, we're used to that weekly routines.
Yes.
In an organization, it's not like that. How do we bridge this, changing their routines?
Okay, so as I told you, this subject that I'm now teaching, the younger grades to be more exact, which is global perspectives, this is something I found that is helping them more compared to their other subjects, which is why even parents want their children to learn this particular topic. It's not about the content of the subject, but rather the approach that you have different perspectives in different areas, how you should align with them getting to know that these different areas can have different ideas, and you have to come across all of them, learn to adapt with it, and work along with it. That I can't theoretically put it into any textbook or anything. That comes only when you do different activities, you do different ways of exploring how to put your opinion forth and how to adjust even among your classmates. So those small adjustments that we do on daily basis of interacting with your class, interacting with teachers, how to make a small change, just change one word a day, that add this word in your sentence today, and then make a change on how you look at things, see how things turn out for you, and then adapt yourself. More importantly, this adaptability has become the in thing now, that you have to be able to adapt yourself to a certain situation, and that's something we try and include in their understanding through this particular topic. Because to be frank, when you're teaching a subject, which is, for example, for me, economics, I try to bring in these ideas there as well. But it's difficult when you have a time limit, time frame, where you have to finish certain topics in a certain time period. This, however, subject, since it's not a board subject for them yet, and it's not something they have to, worry about whether the topic is over or not, helps us make them understand this adaptability that they need to imbibe in themselves. So I have found this to be a very excellent subject that they can, explore further and build up on it eventually as well. So although we have it only for 6, 7, and 8, these grades, we tell them this is not the end of it. This is what will help you in any area you go into later on. So utilize this time period and work on it later on as well, is what we try to imbibe with them. How much it works? Some of them I have found to become such good speakers that even I was not aware before I started the class with them. They used to come up with such ideas, and the manner in which they flourished in different subjects because of it was something new even to us. So as teachers, we found that change also taking place in them.
Teaching is like performance. No matter what subject you're teaching, the chemistry between the teachers and students has to work.
Yes.
How open are you with your students, and how do you enjoy and how do you seek happiness in your profession?
Okay.
And the performances.
Yeah. Again, I don't know where you're getting your questions from. I want to see where you got them from. But these are very interesting questions, I must say. Me personally, I allow them to even critique me when I'm teaching. You're allowed to be critical as long as you're not disrespectful. So you put forth your critique of whatever you think of my teaching as well, in the most straightforward manner, without being overtly rude, and I'll accept it. I'll try to make a change. But if I'm giving that commitment to you as students, I want you to commit to me in terms of that if I give you that kind of a critique, then you will also improve on it. That's what I start my establishment off in that first few weeks of icebreaker. That I tell them you're allowed to say anything to me about me, my teaching, and what we are doing in class, but you have to be in the framework of putting it straightforward. Don't be excessively rude just because you've been given the freedom to it. So freedom of choice is also means you have to be responsible for your choice. And that's what I try with those icebreakers in the first few weeks. Once they realize that they are allowed to speak, they do come up with some ideas that can be even better at times than what we may have planned beforehand. And if possible, I try to include those ideas while teaching them. In such cases, their enjoyment increases, they are learning, and at the same time, they don't feel that, no, ma'am said no, don't do this. Unless, of course, they've been absolutely not disciplined in the class. That's the only time when I tell them, no, you're not going to shout continuously and not pay attention to what's happening. In such case, when the discipline is completely out of bounds, that's the only time I think I have been very, very strict with them and telling them that, you cannot be in such a phase. If you want enjoyable activities, you have to also be responsible that you don't create chaos in the classroom. So it's a give and take. You can't be completely lenient neither can you be completely strict also with them. This is an age group which, at least the one that I handle, which is on the tweens and teens section, where they are the most changing. The change is happening very fast, very quick. They are not understanding that change, and you have to be very, very patient with them. But the more you give them voice, the more they enjoy also in class. But giving voice doesn't mean that you give them complete freedom without responsibility. So then I try, they sometimes then I'm like a scarecrow for them, that shooing them away unless they are being disciplined. So you be disciplined and I'll give you the freedom completely to be vocal in class. And that's a practice I've found for personally in my classes, where they come up to me, they speak to me about their problems as well. At the same time, I am at a distance from them when it comes to discipline, where I can maintain that professional distance that I'm supposed to as a teacher as well. That it's not completely just anything and everything, but relevant to what is needed for their growth and development. I can remember one example where I shared personal experiences with them. There was this one student in my class. I was their class teacher. I would hardly get any time with them actually, because she had not taken my subject. My subject is completely elective, so it's a choice subject. I would very rarely get time with them. But during free classes, I used to make it a point that if no other teacher is there, I would go and sit in the class. Just sit there, finish my work, they are doing their work, just sit with them. And knowing that this particular kid, she used to have a stage fright. I personally have gone through stage fright. So I shared my experiences with her, that if I put a barrier about myself, that no, I'm afraid to speak in front of crowds, I'll never be able to teach in the manner that I do today. So getting her to realize, sharing my personal experiences where I have made a fool of myself while speaking, and getting them to know that yes, mistakes are okay, but you need to step forward, come out of your shell and work on it. That will work wonders. This was one instance where she literally took what I tried to give her in such a manner that the next complete year, I saw her participating in every different activity that we have. And it was her own initiative. Today, she is doing well in a place, and she is in an institution which she likes. She is doing the subjects she likes, and she is also exploring further. And as a teacher, nothing else can be a reward than this kind of a change in a child when you are, putting your heart and soul into the profession. So for me, it is what the students take away from me and how they make a change out of it. This was one instance where she overcame her own stage fright, and I was like, my day is done. I am absolutely done with what I wanted to, and I achieved for at least one person. It's not possible that everyone gets the same output, but at least one person got it, and it worked wonders in her case.
I hope you've enjoyed all the questions, and now
Like
you know.
And
Now you know.
made me think as well, retrospect a bit.
And now you know how surprised this feels like.
Yes.
But I definitely had a very fun and charming session, Nivedita, and the questions came from my curiosity about a teacher, and it was definitely a very knowledgeable and learning session as well for me. Thank you so much for all those nice insights that you have provided on from the kids' perspective, because it's very important for everyone to succeed as a parent, if not professionally.
Yes.
If you have a kid, there's no option, right? Like there, yeah, you cannot just leave everything and be happy. You have to be a successful parent. So and that shows that shows the happiness of the kid, like that only then the kid can be happy. So it is very important for all of us to understand the kids' perspective with the amount of knowledge you have gained by interacting with the kids. is very much helpful for us, and those precise economic answers that you have given. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nivedita, for taking time. And I really hope you enjoy your summer break and have a good trip. And we're looking forward to hear a lot more stories of your kids, your travel in future. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I would just say one thing, that for us as teachers, initially I had this very difficult phase where I had to keep a distance. So, learning that phase and coming to a point where now I can say that yes, all these are also my kids, but at the same time, knowing that they are individuals in themselves, someone else's kids, and going ahead, flourishing in their own fields. When we see them succeed as teachers, nothing else gives us happiness. And that, I think, is what motivates us also to keep on going ahead with our daily job. That, they are succeeding, and in a way, somewhere or the other, we have been maybe in a very minuscule manner able to help them towards that goal of what they were trying to achieve. So that is what gives me the most satisfaction from my job. That I may not be at a level where I am working in a very high professional field or anything, but I am able to contribute to a person's development for them to achieve their goal as a combination rather than just working for oneself. That's what keeps me going every day for my job.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you once again. And I really am glad to know a happy professional teacher. And I'm sure a lot of your students will grow as happy professionals and stay happy as a whole. Thank you so much, Nivedita.